Okay, good evening, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, and children of all ages. Welcome to tonight's session on Edgar Cayce on man's relationship to man. This is our Book 3 offering that came out of here, and quite honestly, this was a rather difficult presentation to put together. Not because the material was particularly difficult, but rather because of the breadth of it. This is a wide topic. And a lot of this comes out of several readings that are pieced together. So the approach that I took with this is to try to find key points, and my tact was that of a jigsaw puzzle, where we have the corners and I'm building it off of that way right there. Now, because of the wide scope of this topic, there may be things that are perceived to be omitted or glossed over, but it's not that they're not relevant, it's just that the amount of material is quite significant. The Book 3 reading, this is the next to last chapter of the Book 3 readings, and the World Affairs readings, all 29 of them. The 3976 series is what compile a lot of the material that was in here. Then the Lord said to Cain, "Where is your brother Abel?" "I don't know," he replied. "Am I my brother's keeper?" Straight out of Genesis. Cayce tells us that we are indeed our brother's keeper. Respect others, help others, love others. These are the keys that will unlock our soul. This is the theme of this presentation. The neighborly advice that we have. We are with each other for a very specific reason. We need each other. We've got to recognize that. So we need to go in and get a feel for just how truly we are well connected with one another, as well as honestly get in touch with ourselves. This is a 1953 lithograph by M.C. Escher titled Relativity. This is also a jigsaw puzzle that I'd done once upon a time. And it's kind of interesting because regardless of how you turn the lithograph, it makes visual sense. The man was sheer genius. It was a quite challenging puzzle because everything is in black and white. Everybody looks the same. And everybody's going different ways and different times, and it's kind of emblematic of how we are here on earth. We all basically are the same, and we're all going in different directions trying to achieve different things. So when we come up and attack life as a puzzle, the easiest way to construct a puzzle normally, as they are often square, is to look for the corner pieces, the two that have two square edges. And we know from there are four corner pieces. The topics that I chose for this, the cornerstones of our relationship man to man, is love, spirit, co-creator, and free will. Each and every one of these four topics are very relative and highly important to us, and it's important for us as human beings at this stage to keep an eye on this and think differently about this as opposed to just paying lip service to it. So let's start off with the top left here. Love. No surprise to anybody who was involved in the Cayce readings. Very, very important word in our readings. And it's very important to us regardless of how we hold it. We hold love in a lot of ways. And it takes on several different meanings. We may be in love with someone. We may love ourselves. We may love to go somewhere, or gee, I would love to have that. Or it may be emblematic of an amorous relationship. Okay? But love is very, very important to us as human beings. And quite honestly, we need to have that love. Out of the final World Affairs reading, 3976:29. For remember, there are unchangeable laws. For God is law, law is God. Love is law, love is God. Very succinct statement in here. A lot of key information for us to remember as human beings with respect to how we should consider adjusting our earthly priorities. Okay? These are also unchangeable. Unchangeable means we're not playing let's make a deal with God. They're not open for discussion. This is how it's going to be. Love is one of those things. Love is very, very key to us. We've got to love several different elements simultaneously here. Like the mind, love is both spiritual and physical. And what we're going to find is that love permeates in our entire existence in a lot of ways. And when it comes to this, one might actually say that it is, in fact, the long arm of the law. No pun intended. 3744. This came out of the mind readings. There was 5 of them. Cayce was asked, what is the law of love? Very simple answer. Giving. Giving. One word answer. Giving, as in given in this injunction, love thy neighbor as thyself. As is given in the injunction, love the Lord thy God with all thine heart, thine soul, and thine body. The grand command, Matthew 22:36-40. Very, very interesting that it comes right out of here. We need to understand that we have to give of ourselves. We must be willing to do for others. There's a lot of ways that we can indeed give to our fellow man. We can give our time, perhaps in a voluntary effort somewhere. We could donate our time. We can also give of our talent. We each have unique skills. Some of us can do creative artwork. Some of us can do construction or trades. All of us have our skills. Perhaps we can donate those free of charge to be part of a cooperative effort. And then finally, we can give of treasure. We can write the check. Perhaps life's situation is such that we're not able to give of our time or our talent. But we can still be supportive of various opportunities around us in helping others. Maybe we just write the check. Very easy to do. And I think it also, in a lot of ways, it has the ability to override that importance, because many people think, well, if I just write the check, then I'm giving and that's good. But the question now becomes, what is the intent behind that? Why are you doing it? Why are you just writing the check? Is it to escape having to do something? Or what? We have to have oftentimes these very, very uncomfortable conversations with ourselves. Okay? And when we give, it behooves us to have it set straight in our minds why we are doing this. Not just because, but rather we're doing it with purposeful intent. Now, we hear this a lot. This is a very common phrase. It comes straight out of the Bible. It is often spoken, but I think it's rarely studied. And this also comes down to a need for us to reflect upon ourselves and have a very good grasp and an honest conversation of how am I selfish? In what ways do I exhibit selfishness in my thought, in my word, in my deed? Cayce tells us that selfishness is really the only sin because what we're doing is we're doing for ourselves and not somebody else, which totally violates this. But if you think back and you study the Cayce readings, we understand that it's quite possible that we have a very, very, very long history of selfish activities. Consequently, it becomes inherently built into us as we come forward. And we need to find out, okay, how am I going to do it? And how do I personally define selfishness? Is it because I'm doing something for me? I want to accumulate material items, growth, wealth at all costs? Is it having my way when I'm interacting with other folks? Is it that I'm going to be selfish and that, well, I've got to think ahead because I might need this sometime in the future. So I'm going to hoard and not do it because we play these head games with ourselves. We need to find out what goes on and how we actually portray this. And it requires deep introspection. And quite honestly, it may not be a very comfortable discussion. Good news is you don't have to talk about it, just between you and you. Left ear and right ear up there and, it's all up in there. But it's important for us to do this. And then, the next question, once we grasp how we are there, then how can I do this? How can I love thy neighbor? And for me personally, I put it in the same terms of how I learned the craft that I do now as an instructor. And this is the way I teach is how would have liked to had this material presented to me back in the day. And I try to put it, what would I want? How would I want to receive this? And then to take it and put it into the context of this discussion then, it's a matter of going out and taking a open-eyed view of my personal surroundings. If I see a need, regardless of how significant or insignificant I may perceive it to be, can I go in and do something? How can I help? How can I take the next step? And I understand that it doesn't have to be really, really big, very, very important. But one thing that I must recognize is that this is a continual effort. And when I put this at the forethought of my mind, I have to put my mind on auto rewind. Because as I motion about, if I go to the store, if I'm out and around somewhere, I'm around other people. When you're around other people, opportunities are presenting themselves in some way, shape, or form if you look at it. And it's a matter of recognizing that and not taking on a stoic outward appearance and just going around your way, focused in and of yourself, but going with an idea of how can I help somebody. That's just how I deal with it myself in my own little pea brain here. Really not a whole lot indifferent from the golden rule. And maybe that's the key. My personal view is getting to heaven is not very complicated. We just got to want to do it. It's very simple. We don't have a lot of things that we have to do. Maybe we just be kind. But that's part of the love portion of this. We're on the top right now. We have the spirit side of things. Spirit is germane to those who believe that life is more than what we see here on the earth, our physical abilities, our physical presence, etc. There's probably more to it than what we see here. What happens after we die? Well, we don't really have evidence of what happens. We have perhaps hearsay by some folks who may have had a near-death experience. We have Cayce's interpretation of it. But whatever happens on the other side, there's a high degree of likelihood that it's going to be done in spirit form. Consequently, we need to keep that in mind. Now, Cayce told us in his readings that once we die, and this comes out of the 262-86 paragraph 21 reading, that when we die, we take on a different form of matter. This is a form of matter. When we die, things change and we move along. But our mind activities transcend, and we're able to still have conscious recognition. And the important part in man's relationship to man is, with respect to spirit, we've got to recognize that each and every body has a shelf life. They have an expiration date. But the soul is eternal. And what we do down here may be a precursor to what we will experience once we take on a different form of matter. Out of Genesis chapter 1, so God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Male and female created he them. Studying the Cayce readings and looking at his insight to why there was a division of our souls were to create it both male and female, quite honestly, it wasn't because we were bored, but rather it was imperative that the soul be split in order to start to bring about a sense of harmony on the earth plane. Because at that time, things were very, very chaotic down here. The thought forms, our crystallized thought forms are down in there, going crazy with these things, okay? And part of this was also not only to create peace and harmony, but to develop the ability for us, each and every one of us individually, to overcome the evil that is in the world. So it was a necessary of importance. Now, and when you look at the duality of our world, we see that we have positive, negative, good and bad, light and dark, yada, yada, yada. All these things go on. Male and female is also a duality. But when we look at these dualities, which one is more important? And the answer is neither. They are both equally important. Because we each need each other. We need light, we need dark. We need evil, believe it or not, so that we can do good, so we know the difference, so we can discern things. Okay, so. Coming out of the 257:20 reading, as has been given, God created man in his own image and gave. I have set before thee this day good and evil. Choose thou whom thou wilt serve, whether the ideals are set in his way and spirit, or the desires of the flesh. Here, Cayce takes that which we learned in the Bible and adds to it. And I have set before thee. Man was created in his own image. Now, I have set before thee good or evil. Choose thou. What are you going to do? You see, and this is kind of way explains the division of what we've got going here. And who are we going to serve? Are we going to serve God? Or are we going to continue to indulge in selfish behavior? And when we continue to indulge in selfish behavior, then we obviously are not serving God. We are self-serving. And that doesn't work long. Does not work well. But going back into creation, this had to happen. The division had to happen. Because we had to have a way of distinction between good and evil. We had to look for the duality. And if you think about what Cayce was saying here and flack back to when you were younger, perhaps you would have seen and remembered the old movies of 1956 or 1950s, 1960s of like Godzilla versus King Kong and stuff like that. Perhaps the earth was quite in that same deal where we had just crystallized monstrosities running the earth, creating havoc. It wasn't necessarily a very good picture once upon a time. So we need to understand that God in his infinite wisdom set before us a way of escape. We had to be able to discern. We had to have a way to change our habits. And this is where it all came in here. Now, we got to make sure that we did this. We are now, again, with the splitting of the spirit, the soul, we have another way of overcoming our flesh desires. Because in itself, it's a challenge. And we start coming in here, and this is the onset of the Adamic body, the fourth root race that Cayce was talking about. And he talks where each of our senses are things to overcome, which is why we are here. Because our sight, our hearing, our vocal words, our taste, our smells, all of these things can in fact be self-serving in a lot of ways. It's imperative upon us to be able to conquer each and every one of these things. And to show further how the interconnected activities are involved in this line of thought, Cayce also says that our five senses are associated with the five races of man. White, black, red, brown, yellow. Each has a subset of our physical senses. But we're all out of the same cloth, and there's nobody really different. The co-creator. Co-creator. This now gives a lot straight out of Cayce's stuff here. Cayce tells us that we were initially put forth to be companions and co-creators with God. That tells me that once upon a time, at the very beginning of stuff, that we had godlike powers. But we also had, through infinite wisdom, free will to use those godlike powers as we so desired. Original sin, according to Cayce, is disobedience. We were disobedient. We did not do that. Didn't make good use of our free will. And then there's talk of the fall from heaven, etc. But did the fall negate our godly-like powers? Did it negate them? Did we lose the ability because we fall? Or have we become over eons so self-absorbed with the I, me, my of things that we forgot how to use them? Perhaps we have them all along, but we have just forgotten how we can, in fact, use our co-creative abilities with God. Oftentimes, we have situations in life that we're going to attribute to random activities, luck, coincidence. But really, is it luck and coincidence? Or is it an extension of our free will? Is it something that we as human beings have created? Our paths with other folks are not coincidental. Everybody is here for a reason. There's a reason that they are for you. There's a reason with you, around you. There's a reason for that. And it's just not that somebody else is here and taking up space. It's that they serve a purpose. What that purpose is to be defined by you if you choose to think about it. And all of this forces us to, if we were to open our minds and eyes and think about this, and ask ourselves, okay, why and what is there for me to see? How is this related to me as co-creators? When we start thinking about the mind being the builder, Cayce's adage there, what are we building? We're building the ability to co-create. Unfortunately, we put all of the glory on ourselves and say, well, I did this and I did that. But quite honestly, we really didn't. 1549:1, the soul of each individual is a portion then of the whole, with the birthright of creative forces to become a co-creator with the Father, a co-laborer with Him. This is pretty much how our entire universe works. We were created to be co-creators, companions. Everything on this earth is serving a dual purpose for us. One is to provide necessary things for us as human beings, but in the way that those things are provided, they too are glorifying God. We might see a creation of a beautiful sunset or an animal, but again, how is it created? When we look at the Gospel of John 14:12, Jesus tells us that, hey, you have the power. He didn't think it robbery to be considered equal with the Father. He said, you have the same power to do what I do. And even greater acts and deeds will be done by you. That's a very positive statement if we think about it. Now, he didn't say when, but he did say that we have these abilities to do this. We've got to make the choice if that's what we are going to do. Very, very uplifting statement that Jesus made. All we have to do is believe in Him in its entirety, and then we too have the same amount of abilities that Jesus had. Maybe that's a better understanding of universal laws of what's going on down here. Maybe it's working in harmony as a co-creator with God in every single thing that you do, as opposed to thinking, so, well, I'm just going to eat, and we don't think about it. Maybe we give thanks for this, because who created the plants and animals who willingly gave of themselves for our benefit? We didn't have anything to do with that. It came from God. He's giving us the nourishment so that we can have the strength to go in and co-create and demonstrate His appearance on this earth, his way with us, if we can do that. Thus is each soul, each entity, a co-creator with that universal consciousness ye call God. Now, Cayce was did a lot of differences in here. Creative forces, gee, what was that? Consciousness, universal consciousness, a lot of different words, and we do it today. Because sometimes just saying the word God is not cool. We've got to show that we have some sort of sophistication about this. So we're going to use big words as opposed to just saying it's God. People oftentimes are ashamed of God. Perhaps they're ashamed of their relationship with God. But should we be? I don't think so. In fact, it would behoove each and every one of us to pursue that relationship. And we do that with the way we treat each other. As I go to work in the morning, I'm driving down Shea Boulevard, and I pass a Presbyterian church that usually has some interesting little sayings on there. And today, in the spirit of the season, it said, the wise men sought Jesus. Wise men today should do the same. And it makes a lot of sense, because if you are wise, you will look for this and not be trying to put all of this stuff on yourself. We like to do that because we feel that it is all about us. I did this, I did that. No, it's not me who does it. It's probably a we more than a me. Free will. This is where the rubber meets the road. God gave us all free will to do that which we would do. We had a choice. And to this very day, we still do. Do you serve God, or are you going to serve yourselves? In the early days of our existence, we chose poorly. We did not make very good choices, and we were disobedient. Now, here we are, Schoolhouse Rock number 3 from the sun. And we are in the laboratory of life, exhibiting our free will once again, but this time in the vein of learning to control ourselves, to put our free will to be used the way it is to be used, not in a disobedient manner. 4:40:16. As has ever been, there is no influence that may supersede the will of man. For such are the gifts unto the sons of men, that they may make their souls such as to be the companionship with the all-wise, all-creative forces, or separate from them. There's our free will. We have the choice to be with God or against God. Kind of like the old Clint Eastwood movie with Dirty Harry. You feel lucky, punk? Or do you? Because it probably won't end well if you try to continue to separate yourself from them. Because there's another Cayce reading out there that says, for how long may man be disobedient to his maker? Eventually, man will wear down and come into line. That is by intent also. Okay? Strongest power in the universe right there. Man's free will. We can do whatever it is that we want. And when we start applying our free will, what are we doing? We're starting to co-create in another way. Okay? Now, life here on earth as we know it today is a big balancing act. We need to learn to balance our spirituality with our materiality. We need to be unashamed workmen, as Cayce says. But oftentimes, life gets in the way of us doing this, and we will fall short for standing up and saying, I stand with God. Perhaps in a lot of ways, and we see it on this earth right now, every day today, that's doing that may end up as a death penalty for you. That means your earthly existence is snuffed out because of what you believe. Oftentimes we may not want to say something like that because it may not be popular. We see that this is not a new occurrence. It's been going on for a while. There's evidence of that in the Bible with Peter and his roosters. You will defy me 3 times before the rooster crows. Did Peter man up and stand up for God? For Jesus? I don't think so. But that's okay. God is very, very prudent in his application. He is well thought out, well designed plans. And when we go out there in man's world and we break man's law, then we expect some sort of punishment. God has his laws too. If we break those, then we can in fact expect some sort of punishment. And it's not God that's punishing us, it's us punishing ourselves by the choices that we make. We are inflicting pain upon ourselves. And in the big picture of things, pain can be either instructive or corrective. So it's important for us to recognize that when things are not going the way we would want it, there's a high degree of likelihood that we did it to ourselves. We've just got to step outside of ourselves and say, okay, what happened? But we may not have the ability to do that. Again, from the mind readings, with each development, that force, known upon the plane as will, is given to man over and above all creation. That force that may separate itself from its maker, for with the will, man may either adhere or contradict the divine law, those immutable laws, as are set between the Creator and the created. Immutable, not open for discussion. You got to do it this way. Very, very important that we do this. We need to know that we have the will to do it, but these are divine laws that we have the ability to break if we so choose. But because they are immutable, then you are just flying in the face of reason. And you don't want to be doing that because it's not going to end well. And when you look at the statement here that God has given us domain over all of creation, and you think about what it is that we can do and what we have done with various entities of the animal kingdom, we see oftentimes demonstrations where we can have a bird fly from the top of a stadium and land on somebody's arm. We can see that upon demand we can have fish come out of the water and jump through hoops. Upon demand we can get a dog to sit and beg and roll over and play dead. But we have a very difficult time in controlling ourselves. We haven't quite tamed that monster yet. Consequently, that's what we're here to learn to do, is to use our free will in a positive way. When we don't, then we are informed of the violation, usually in the form of pain. And when we look down here and we take our big picture, this is our three-dimensional existence summarized. These are the main entities. There's God, there's us collectively and individually. There is an interdependence between ourselves and other people. Because think about how we do this. There are people with skills that help us. There are people who can grow food for us. There are people who help us when we are in need, if we are sick. We, in our own lots in life, provide help to others as well. So all of this is all going on at the same time. We are all creating and using those skills which we have at this immediately. We rely on each other, whether we know it or not. We may not always think of it in those terms, but we in fact do that. But we are all each connected to God and each in the same way. Because as we do to others, we are in essence doing to God. So the things that we do need to be thoughtful and done with loving intent. Because if we are going to be mean and spiteful to other people, you're going to have people mean and spiteful to you, and it's a reflection of how you view God within yourself. Not really a good thing for us to do. For there is only the one ideal in human relationships, and that is as that given by Him who is the way, the truth, the light. Love thy neighbor as thyself. We have a lot of ideas, which in essence are thoughts. Everything in this room actually had its origin in a thought. Somebody said, I'm tired of standing, I'm going to build something to sit on. And they visualized it and they created it. It was a thought. We may think of other people in certain ways. But that's what an idea is. It's just a basic thought of some sort. The difference with what an ideal is that an ideal is something that we live, something that we put into play, into action, so that we can in fact make loving choices towards our neighbors, applying positive things, words, thoughts, deeds to them. And when we practice this, and if we have a mindset that I want to go be helpful to other folks and do for my neighbor, broader aspect of man, and if we do this, initially it's kind of like learning to ride a bicycle where it's kind of clunky, not quite, doing real good with it initially, but then the more you practice it, the easier it becomes, and then it becomes a habitual thing where it becomes an automatic response that we do. It's an involuntary response, very similar to breathing. Okay? We're going to have involuntary response when we see somebody, we're going to be willing to go help them. And it's a matter of choice. Now, Cayce also tells us that the ideal may not necessarily be set in spiritual matter. And that's fine, because other people have material-based ideas such as power and money and sex and things like that. That's what they're after. That's what motivates them. They haven't yet evolved or are not demonstrating how they have evolved into this mindset. And Cayce said everybody's on a different level here. Not everybody's on the same level. Consequently, it makes for a lot of interesting interactions. And this is where we need to have the patience come in. And when we're patient with ourselves and patient with others, then we get along a lot better with people, thus interacting with our relationships between us and man. As self receives, so may self give. As may be termed in common parlance, the most interesting thing in life is self. Yet self must become null and void as losing self in love for another. Yet self must have a part in the losing as in the giving of aid to another. 262:2, search for God, cooperation. This is pretty much summing it up here. We've got to be willing to do for somebody else, and just because it may make their life just a little bit easier. One of the things we don't know about, and it's a huge variable for each and every one of us, is that we never know what another is going through. We never know what burdens they are bearing right now. And burdens can come in a lot of ways. So when we start looking at this, maybe we go in and try to do things for other people that might make their job a little bit easier. Let's think about the grocery store for a minute. Everything today's got a barcode, right? And what does the clerk at the grocery store do? They take your products off the conveyor, look for the deal, scan it, and move it on down, right? Well, could we, as we are placing our products on the conveyor, put them in such a manner such that it's easier for the clerk to see them? Could we, in fact, be creating a win-win because we're now making life easier for somebody because they just go clickety-clickety-clack as opposed to playing hide-and-seek? And win-win because their life is easier and you get out of the store sooner. Just one way of looking at it. But what about the unknown? Perhaps the clerk who's been standing all day has sore feet. Maybe her feet hurts. Well, if they have to stay on longer because of us, because we're just throwing stuff on there, then it's creating a little bit of pain for them. Could we potentially ease that? Because again, we never know what somebody's going through. But yet if we go into intent, let's make this person's job easier and try to do it. It may help. You never know. The other side of the coin that oftentimes we run into is that based on certain times of our lots in life, people may adopt a mindset that they are to be served and not served. They don't have to do that because I have status or I have wealth or something like that. And then they're just going to go out and do it. They won't do that. They'll just callously just, it's your job, do it. So what about that? Well, what about going through the grocery store? You ever walk through the grocery store and notice things on the floor falling off the shelf? What do you do with it? Not my job. Maybe we make the effort because we can. Maybe we pick it up and put it back where it was. Somebody's going to have to do it. Why not you? Maybe the person who has to do it hurt their back today. And for them to do it, they can do it, but yet it's going to kind of cause them some discomfort. But you're physically able. You see a need to do something. Why don't we do it? We're making somebody's job easier. Now somebody else doesn't have to do it. And if you get bored, go to Walmart at Christmas time because there's crap all over the floor. All right? But this is what we're doing. We're doing it for somebody else. We don't know whose job it is. We're not looking for benefits for doing this. We're just seeing a need and doing it because somebody's going to have to pick it up. And you never know. Maybe you get a gold star somewhere. And when we start doing this, we are sequestering ourselves for somebody else. You know, if you see a piece of trash on the floor, I don't want to pick it up. It might have germs. Somebody's going to. We'll pick it up and throw it away. You know, there's a lot of studies, and John will probably tell you that when you look at some certain companies, they actually stage interviews where there's situations put out there to see how you're going to react. They'll actually put something on the floor and intentionally have you walk by it with somebody else just to see what you're going to do. Because it speaks a lot about your character. And if you're going to ignore it, then maybe they may make a hiring decision based on your action or inaction. You never know. But if you see something, you take action, and it's for the right intent, no problem. You're doing good. 262:65, destiny reading. And from him we may in mercy find mercy, as we show mercy, patience, truth, justice, and loving kindness to our fellow man. For as ye do it unto these, my brethren, ye do it unto me. Preferring one above another? No, but preferring others above self, that thou may be the arm, the shoulder, the one upon whom someone may lean in coming to know the knowledge of the love of the Christ in their experience. A lot going on here. Again, it's the boomerang effect of life. If you want God to have patience, mercy, loving kindness towards you, maybe you show it to somebody else. And we start seeing it to other people, then it starts to come to us. We are doing this for God because now what we are demonstrating is our ability to use our free will properly. And when we are down here, a lot of it's learning to control ourselves by using our free will. Consequently, why don't we show these things to others? And it's very, very hard in our life because life is busy. But the thing to remember is that we are all cut from the same cloth. We may come in various shapes, size, and colors, but that's just here. Spiritually, we're all the same. We are all the same. There is no difference. No one person is better than any other person. Man, in his judgment, may say that somebody's better because I have accumulated wealth, or I have status, or I am this, I am that. But that's man's laws. Accolades and artifacts don't cut it with God. When we stand before the God, we are all being judged the same way. No favoritism like man deals it out. And when we do these things and we try to make the effort to do this, we need to remember that we are all in this together. There's no lone rangers going to heaven. We need other people need us. We need to be willing to lend a hand and an arm, a shoulder at any given time. Because there's going to be times that we're going to need one ourselves. It would behoove us to go in and be willing to give that so that when we need it, one may pop out of nowhere. When we do this with the intent of being of a helpmeet to somebody, then our intentions are aligned properly. We need to remember that all 7 billion of us have some things in common. One, each and every person that we crossed paths with have the same strongest universal force within them. They have free will. We may intend to try to help somebody, but they too can choose not to listen to us. That's fine. Cayce tells us that it's the try that matters. And if we're going to do something to see how it turns out, in essence, we're looking for the flower to bloom. Well, hey, we don't need to see the flower to bloom, because there's things that you'll see and say and do to somebody today that it won't resonate them for 30 years. And then one day, ding, oh, I remember that. Somebody told me that. And it makes a difference to them. Not on your time frame, but when they need it. And this is why we can't be trying to see, okay, let's see the result. I'm going to do this. We don't want to do that, okay? Now, we have that effect. It's the try that matters. Okay? We have free will and the try. We have free will to try to help somebody. They have free will to accept or reject our offers. We can't care what the answer is. They don't have to accept it. We can extend an offering, but it's up to them to take it as they personally see fit. And this is a pretty good depiction of what's going on. Everybody wants to get to the top of the hill, but you don't see anybody going at it alone. Everybody's tethered together. One is helping another. And if we were to take a material consciousness for those who are not necessarily initiated in spirituality, they may have their mindset that life is all about me. Give me more, I want more. How much is enough? Oh, it ain't never enough. He who dies with the most toys wins. This is a material mindset that people sometimes have. And if this is how they're going to live life, then invariably confusion and disharmony will reign supreme to our detriment if we just do this, because it's selfishness. There's nothing in there that says anything about somebody else. And we live in a very material society, very egocentric in a lot of ways. And we're seeing it. But when we start looking at this, can we in fact do something differently ourselves? I think so. 24:28. For this, the ideal as it is set should be not as what others should do to make the ideal situation for self, but as how self may apply itself in its ideal to bring the ideal relationships with others. 57 years ago, next Saturday, a man said, "Ask not what your country can do for you, but ask what you can do for your country." I see that right there. Same thing right here. That's what Cayce's saying right there. Not ask for your country, ask for what can you do for your fellow man. Not what can they do for you. Don't worry about that. What can you do? Pretty prophetic. Thought that was pretty interesting because I saw that. I said, whoa, this sounds familiar. I remember that. I think it was January 20th, 21st, 1960. JFK. But have we learned anything? Well, I believe that if you look at how the country's gone, Kennedy's words has fallen on deaf ears. Because now everybody wants something. It's all about gimme, gimme, gimme. When we migrate into a spiritual consciousness, then things become a lot more tolerable, because now life is not all about just me. I will be willing to freely give to others. I shall play nice with others. I will share my toys. When we do this, peace and harmony permeate all aspects of our being. We saw what the material side of things are. This is the spiritual side. What choose you? What's your choice? But this is how we are starting to look for. We're looking at others, not just ourselves. And this is the true relationship of man to man. Let me be an assistant to you, brother. Let me help you somehow, some way. And when we start looking at this and we summarize what Cayce's rules are for getting along with each other and spiritual success, all we need to do is look at the first 4 chapters of Book 1 in A Search for God. And there it is. First, cooperation, working harmoniously with others and together united in purpose and aim. Second, preparing self to fully participate in a cooperative group effort. Third, set an ideal by which to proceed, guideposts to action, individually and collectively. Fourth, do our works on the basis of faith, total trust in the Lord for the best possible outcome in our service to others. Cooperation, chapter 1. Know thyself, chapter 2. What is my ideal, chapter 3. Faith, chapter 4. Boom. Work together. Lend a hand, receive a hand. Protect yourself. Get yourself ready to go and be of assistance. Don't be a couch potato. Set your ideal of hopefulness and helpfulness. Be a helpmeet. Make that your purpose. And then let your work be received as the Lord sees need for at that point in time. Let Him deal with how it's to be received. Do your best and don't worry about results. Please discuss how and what are the manifestations of the Father. Cayce answered, fruits of the Spirit. Gentleness, kindness, the loving word, patience, hope, persistence, and above all, consistency in thy acts and in thy speech. If we apply the fruits of the Spirit towards our fellow man on a consistent, persistent basis with correct thoughts, words, and deeds, we're going to be in good shape. Because now we can start to manifest the greatness of the Father here on earth. Like begets like. Great begets great. Things that we put out are going to come back to us. And if we are creating with a positive, loving mindset, then what's going to come into fruition? Positive and loving stuff. Now, this is the recipe right there. You take 1 pinch of kindness, a teaspoon of gentleness, tablespoon of loving words, 2 heaping cups of patience, sprinkle in some hope and persistence, season with consistency to taste, mix well, and heat to 98.6 degrees, and serve when ready. There's your recipe right there. There's your recipe right there. That is the fruits of the Spirit. And when we do that, and we put it all together, we have solved our puzzle. Because the corner pieces of love, spirit, co-creation, and free will all embrace the fruits of the Spirit. in between. And this is what we need to put in for ourselves. All of these things with the cornerstones of love, spirit, co-creation, and free will. Key to remember to all of this: in the Lord's house are many mansions, and they that keep his ways shall dwell therein. In those bodies that they build with their fellow man day by day. Know the Lord that he is good. We're building our bodies, our spiritual bodies, by our relationship with our fellow man. Not only spiritually, but at the same time, perhaps outside of our awareness, we're also doing it in a material type of basis. Okay? Now we've got everything that we need to do. What we are going to give and how we treat others is how others will be treating us. It's in our best effort, in our best interests, to take a loving approach in all aspects of our fellow man's relationships, regardless of how they treat us. Think back to the final hours of Jesus and how he dealt with those loving human beings. Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and thy neighbor as thyself. Herein is the basis of all spiritual law. The next law, as mankind knows it, is like begets like. We have tendencies of forgetting this part here. We don't always think about this in the course of our day, in our minds, thoughts, words, and deeds. But it's highly true. Think of life down here as a boomerang. What you give is going to come back to you. You shall reap what you sow. Okay? We need to know that. And once we take our puzzle that we have built, we need to frame it. Glue it together, frame it, and hang it on the wall. And it's going to look something like this. Because reaping what we sow, regardless if it is loving or not, will come back to us. And so when we put all of these things together, there's your life's puzzle. And at the end of the day, the choice is ours. Because our destiny, man's destiny, lies within his individual grasp. Doth he take hold upon those laws, those self-evident truths, applying them in his relationship one to another? The choice is ours. What shall you choose? Questions? And that's